Farm Small, Farm Smart Daily is part of the Modern Grower Podcast Network. Check out some of our other shows like Carrot Cash Flow, the Growing Microgreens Podcast, and Farm Small, Farm Smart. Learn more about the shows using the link below. So we have evolution of soils and clays over a long period of time, geologic time scale we've been talking. Now, if we go on a much shorter time scale, human scale, I think a lot of people have experienced this in a row crop field in a garden. They start wanting to plant something, they start digging and they're pulling up chunks of clay. Maybe they're basketball size, really large, feels like clay, looks like clay, chunks. When you start to put plants in that, people say the clay goes away, but it's not going away. Are you just diluting out the clay with organic matter via roots, and maybe if you're mulching or manuring on top or composting on top, are you getting in between some of those clay bonds with organic matter? When you have a lot of clay, you introduce plants to it, what happens to that clay? Breaking apart? Is it diluting down? Is it just fracturing? Is it going away?
Well, on the time scale of the human lifetime, soils can evolve, but not very much unless there's erosion or deposition, right? You can lose massive amount of soil in a single storm one night if you've got a horrible erosion event. But if you're not having erosion, then the changes are relatively slow. You can observe some of those changes in a few decades. For example, if one of the things we saw in soils that were being acidified by large amounts of nitrogen fertilizer was that we were chemically altering the soil and you were losing cation exchange capacity. And it was, the clay minerals were evolving. You have freely swelling smectites with all these negative charges on the surface, but the interlayers were starting to get gummed up with hydroxides, with aluminum iron, which inhibited the swelling and inhibited and blocked the cation exchange sites. So that can happen on the scale of a few decades. We could see a change, but for the most part, it doesn't change very rapidly. The mineralogy doesn't change. Organic matter is different. Soil organic matter is a very reactive and very important component of our soil fertility, productivity, and its physical properties. What is soil organic matter? It's, you can think of it as dead plant tissue, microbes, but they have evolved. They are no longer, certainly I put a leaf down there, you can recognize the leaf and you can watch the leaf decompose. Well, now you're releasing various organic molecules. Those molecules can be a group of amino acids, a peptide, or it can be sugars, 2 or 3 sugar molecules linked together, saccharide, disaccharide, trisaccharide, or something like that. And you can have various chemical reactions that cause those to polymerize. Or you can add in a silicon or aluminum that would tend to coagulate those organic molecules. And you are producing over time what we call humus or humic substances that are present in the soil that give soils the black color. This humic material exists in a number of different forms, but think of it as a fuzzy, furry film that sort of coats the mineral surfaces, fills voids between mineral particles, can fluff up the soil. Okay? You start taking your clay minerals and you cover it with humic materials, and they're going to be less likely to swell. You can even get some humic materials inside of the clays themselves, inhibiting the swelling. Humic materials also contain lots of other nutrients. So we've been talking mostly about cations like potassium, calcium, magnesium. But for a plant to grow, also needs nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur. And these tend to exist as anions, negatively charged ions. The nitrogen can exist both as a positive and negative. It can exist as ammonium, which is a +1, or it can exist as nitrate, which is a -1. And it can be transformed between the two. Okay, it can also exist as an amino acid inside of that humic material. So typically, soil humus has a carbon to nitrogen ratio of about 10-1. And as microbes consume the humus, the nitrogen, which is part of the amino acids that is part of this humic material, gets released into the soil solution as an ammonium form. And plants can take that up. So the humus plays a very critical role in supplying particularly nitrogen, but also to some extent phosphorus and sulfur and other more anionic nutrients to support plant productivity. So really they work synergistically together. But what you're referring to is, you talked about these chunks of clay. Of course, they're not pure clay. They're a mixture of clay, sand, and silt. But if you get enough clay in there, they can dry out and become quite hard. Yep. But you get enough humus in there, and you can basically fluff it up. The humus has a low density, and it fills all these pores in between the particles and fluffs it up. It holds water, it provides habitat for microorganisms, and it provides food for microorganisms. So the humus, the soil organic matter, evolves relatively rapidly. Whereas I mentioned ago that the mineralogy doesn't change much on a human lifetime time scale. A little bit, but not a lot, unless there's an erosion event, that sort of thing. But the organic matter can go up and down depending on how you manage that soil. If I'm putting lots of manure on, I have a perennial crop, a grass crop, as opposed to a row crop, which is there just part of the year. I'm putting greater amounts of organic matter, fresh biological material, plant roots, leaves, stems, into the soil. I build up the organic matter. But if I, let's say, grew silage corn, right? And I was cutting that silage off, taking it away, and not putting anything back on that soil, I would cause rapid degradation of soil quality, and much of that would be due to the loss of the organic matter. Also, it would be due to removal of the potassium, calcium that are in the silage corn. Okay? So you can, in a lifetime, you can take a very fertile soil and make it very infertile, or you could take an infertile soil and build it back up, depending on how you manage it, what you put back in.
Did you know if you're a farmer, you can get your low tunnels paid for by the NRCS? Through a recently launched government program, farmers can get between $4 and $5 per square foot in reimbursement towards a Quick Hoops low tunnel system. That's free money to help increase production on your farm. Learn more about Quick Hoops and the NRCS program at shop.moderngrower.co or using the link below.